Okay, we're moving on to the last part of the day. So what have we got? Yes, Dr. Anthony McSherry is going to talk on masculinity and Kierkegaard's code, or the feminization of Freud in contemporary society. Tony, do you want to introduce yourself if you... Oh, anyway,
yeah, okay.
Over to you. I'll let you know when you've got a few minutes left.
All right, thanks, Susan. Only my family call me Anthony. It usually strikes fear into me, so I'll.
Oh, it's well,
Tony. No, that's fine. I know it's down to that.
It was Dell's.
I've called this talk Masculinity and Pre-Association. So it's taken me a while to write it out, so I'll just read it out. In 1935, Levinas published an essay titled On Escape, in which he says we become sick of ourselves and we need to get out of ourselves. He was trying to think through and escape the being that Martin Heidegger had just described in Germany in 1927. Amongst other things in his essay, Levinas talks about the fact of being riveted to oneself. And that's kind of caught me, that sense of being riveted. So fast forward in Freudian space into the strange environment of psychotherapy, where in the weird world this encounter provokes. It does seem like I am riveted to some form of being, but yet I always have a sense of this need to be prepared to let go of thoughts that seem to belong to my very flesh, the certainties of intellect and theories, and protect the space for uncertainty. And then there is Derrida, who says, there is a way of thinking about truth which is not reassuring, which is not in general what we think of truth. That would bring us into a discourse about the truth of truth, and Heidegger, who says truth is non-truth. The field is open. In talking about psychotherapy and masculinity, I'd like to place uncertainty and truth as non-truth alongside Wittgenstein on meaning as being like a gestalt, the common experience of seeing a certain pattern in things is like a meaning that is forced upon us. Picture your national flag, for example, or the face of your child, or a loved one. What meanings step forward like ghosts more real than the page before you? What deep-set meanings are we riveted to? As a small child in school, we were taught to trace out maps of the island of Ireland, geographically tracing the mountains, hills, rivers, lakes, bogs, islands, and inlets, learning the names by heart. The movement of the pencil along the grooves and edges of the bright green plastic stencil seemed to travel through the tops of my fingers, through my arm, to rest somewhere in my chest. Northern Ireland didn't exist on these maps, even when we drew in the provincial and county boundaries of the north. The green, white, and gold of the flag was really green, white, and orange. I thought gold would have been better. The orange was for the orange men who wouldn't feel left out, and the white was for peace and hope between the green and the orange. I had never seen an orange man. They were called orange because they followed a man from a place called Orange that wasn't in Ireland. I wondered if we got the same amount of the flag as the green, even though there weren't that many of them. My mother told me the proper Irish flag should have been the golden plough and the stars on a blue background. They flew it at the GPO in 1916, but De Valera was against women and he didn't like that flag. Michael Collins was for women, but Owl Dev got him shot. My father raised his hand to his forehead as if to block out some thought, and somehow the conversation ended there. It was good then not to be against women, and in my father's raised hand there was something about not being bad to men as well, including men who might be against women. A kind of poetry was in the names of the inlets and lakes, rivers, bogs, towns, and mountains, sometimes Gaelic, sometimes English. The Irish word for mountain sounded the same as the English word for your sleeve. And when I would hear how we would say things like, those are the Sleeve Blue Mountains, people didn't seem to care that they were saying mountains twice. Symbols and words guided into images that inhabited. Guinness was the most famous thing about Ireland, but that's not why the symbol of Ireland was a golden harp. Green was the colour of Ireland because everything was green almost all the time. A certain softness of my mother enveloped the green, and a certain harshness of my father was in the taut strings of the harp that could hurt a child's fingers. Walking home from school once about age 6, I found a group of other boys playing King of the Castle. It looked dangerous as some of those boys were big and could send you flying. But somehow I felt myself running up the mound of grassed over soil and getting to the top. The school bag on my back felt light then, and for a few moments a surge of something like victory ran through my veins, and I straightened up in a kind of clear-headed understanding of something, just before another boy sent me flying back down. Nobody seemed to care whether you hurt yourself or not. I told the priest on Sunday that I'd never be a priest, no, not even a Jesuit, because they wore dresses, and everyone laughed. At the kitchen table waiting for our tea, my mother's back to us, I started biting my nails because my father did, and experimented with his brill cream in the bathroom before bedtime. He could easily hold me in one arm, but my mother would need two. A straight look that didn't give way was my father's. So what we see here are images of thousands infused with words, sounds, touch, and even smells, the whole sensual world of being. What looms here are images of a worried father, a soft mother, a harsh Jesuit. We could invent things if we wanted, but the proof is in the speaking. Meanings seem to solidify into what becomes an identity. It must be more than we can know. At what point does something form a knot in the fabric of the psyche, something we cannot untangle or pass over? Meanings multiply later on, but those first ones seem like playing cards dealt out with a different significance. It seems they are dealt and not chosen. Yet perhaps some sort of original love guides a kind of interest or choice in how they fall. I can't help but imagine a Palestinian or Israeli boy mapping out place names and the whole sensual world dividing them along lines they are even unaware of, and the killings and the adults spitting at children in Northern Ireland. How many people everywhere are defending an image, an ideology that has imposed itself in their bodies as a sensual meaning that will not budge? It seems then that the meaning of one's masculinity, like an old broken bone, has already been set before we can begin to speak of it. And for every masculine image, there is its feminine flip side. We can add to the complexity by twisting each image like a Mobius strip, so that in trying to trace what is masculine, we find ourselves in the feminine. But something always seems to get jammed and stuck, knotted into the body itself. We can't just think our way out of our own being or our bodies, at least not without doing some serious damage. That kind of non-embodied thinking is like spinning a wheel that is not geared into anything. It might take a long time to catch a glimpse of how we are geared into our own selves and the world, or our intentionality towards it and from within it. What's going on in therapy then when I regard myself, delusional or not, as masculine? What seems to happen is something that is understandable more from the inside, even though it interweaves with the outside. This insideness could be implied by Freud's common phrase, psychoanalysis shows. He could be talking about the experience of working inside the space-time of psychotherapy. So it seems too that understanding one's masculinity and femininity is an experience that is understood from the inside, while it is permeable to the outside. There doesn't seem to be an easy way. We have to live through and encounter what has meaning, what shifts and changes happen, and what changes are impossible. Shifts and changes can happen, but some cannot. Something runs up against a knot that must be accommodated. The knots are like fixations of identity, what Lacan might call quilting points. As Kierkegaard would say, we can't just change the self like we are changing a coat. Maybe it's true that to be able to get outside this ideology is superhuman. Is this what Nietzsche meant? If someone were to do it, it would surely engender the deepest loneliness or dislocation. But to go beyond ideology is surely to go beyond our bodies. This seems to be a thought experiment that exposes the reality of being human.
You got about 4 minutes left, Tony.
Okay, 4 minutes to save the world. By dropping names like Freud, Levinas, Derrida, and so on, I'm appealing to authority, but to the authority of reason, and not only in the tradition of the Enlightenment. I am privileging this kind of authority, and it is no accident that such an interest is down to a kind of love. I sometimes place these figures in place of my parents, but also place them in place of myself, wondering what they would say, sitting in the kitchen, feeling the dawning world of reason's first unfolding of its colors, finding a home in my mind. And I imagine a dawning world first taking place in another's mind in therapy in a similar way. Some of the above examples trace out masculine as physically strong, as paying little heed to one's nails, as standing alone, as not wearing dresses, as being inscribed in a place with names. Feminine as being soft in one's physicality, as not being physically strong, as cooking for those you love, as not being violent. Challenges happen with time, images get broken, and new experiences crash against the old. At a teenage disco, it didn't seem possible that 3 girls beat up another girl, even kicking her in the face with their platform shoes because she was too pretty. Something suppressed rose into consciousness. I'm reminded of Lacan's comparison of the mother to a crocodile. But it is other people, including the mother, who open a way for the child. The child is at the mercy of the love of other people, both men and women. One's masculinity is formed in such a fleshly printing press. In trying to find some form of space that can make room for the endless production from such a machine, a fleshly printing press, what I turn to is Freud's couplet of free-floating attention alongside free association as something eternally important. In this kind of space, some people can come to understand and know themselves in a way that transmutes the discontent of life into a creative activity. But more importantly, this space allows an ethical recognition because it is openness itself. Free association does not end, but just finds new pathways through and around the landscape. Making a place for this open space is not a fad that time will wear out. But right now, it is especially in need of protection against the violence of science or technology, as Heidegger warned. Rather than technology being the child of reason now, it has taken its place as parent. And so reason's authority has been excluded or covered over. It is like technique masquerading as wisdom. I can't but think of Heidegger's warning that being reveals itself, but also withdraws itself, so that only something limited can be known or even thought of. Truth hides that it also is non-truth. Is this what is being sensed now in the world? Is the triumph of technology being met with a violent appeal to a different kind of authority? In the world today, there is a return to an appeal to so-called strong men and strong ideologies offering certainty about how to get what they want. This seems to be a push against a scientism that has alienated us from the sensual relation to ourselves and the world. But it is a push towards blind authority, perhaps an appeal to a father who is in denial that he himself is compromised. For this reason, free associating psychotherapy now seems to me to be more like a feminine discourse, and like the feminine everywhere, it is under siege from the appeal to strong men who are certain, or the violent certainty of hard science. Such certainties say, my way is the only way, not seeing that such a way offers no escape from what Levinas might call being riveted to a self-enclosing nausea. I'll end on this sentence. If an older and wiser Heidegger in 1966 then says, only a God can save us, I would respond, we only have ourselves. We have to embrace that terrifying moment when we launch ourselves up the grassy hill and take the risk that the big boys might send us flying every time or might even kill us.
Thank you, Tony. Thanks. There's time for 2 or 3 questions if anybody has any or comments. Please.
Love that. Thank you, Tony.
Thanks, Sally.
Very gentle. And, you know, that idea of the thoughtfulness in the room, not nailing people down, not nailing them down.
Hard to stay with the uncertainty of not doing it, because it's almost every time we open our mouths, we kind of nail people down, which is kind of draws me towards this person-centered approach, or else just not saying anything.
Yes, Del, off you go. Thank you.
Tony, I'm just sort of staying with the we only have ourselves. Yeah.
Yeah.
Saying at the end. And I suppose I'm just thinking with regard to, you know, we only have ourselves to blame. You know, I think there's, you know, there's a problem, isn't there, with, you know, psychotherapy, whatever you call it, counseling, whatever, psychoanalysis, that somehow we come up with that we've got somebody else to blame, you know, it was our parents or our siblings or something like that, which, you know, indeed may have been responsible. We're responsible now, and psychotherapy sort of, I think, can stop us taking responsibility for who we are now. But I'm thinking of it, and I think you're saying, you know, we might go and try and buy a new coat, like, you know, the Kierkegaard model of how not to do it. And I'm just, again, I suppose I'm trying to say with regard to the theme of our conference today, you know, I'm saying we've only got ourselves to blame as psychotherapists for our inabilities to work in this area. I don't know if you'd go along with that or not.
I think the sense of feeling uncertain as a therapist, you know, when you're sitting with someone in a room, that can be kind of terrifying, because you're not. It's strange, almost feeling certain in your uncertainty, you know. And I think that's very difficult to kind of maintain, because it does open up a very strange space where people then can just say what they want, or but of course people won't, or, you know,
But we can't open it up if we're too uncertain about ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, that we can't go to uncertainty.
Yeah.
You know, that the client might be turning us on, turning us off, all those kind of things.
Yeah.
What they're talking about.
Maybe uncertainty is not comfortable. No, it's not a comfortable place to be in sometimes.
Well, it's both, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
I think through psychotherapy it can be the source of the life, you know, of really of,
Yeah.
is when things are certain. It's death.
Yeah.
But it can also get too much and close us down.
But also, if you're talking about someone's coming to you in therapy and they're talking to you about their masculinity or you know, how they are as a person, I think part of the stuff is you're touching on a sensual relation. You know, you're touching on something very embedded. You know, but is also very violent. It can be very violent if it's touched on. So, somehow, after writing that stuff, I thought, do we just have to tolerate each other as much as possible and engage as much as possible, you know, with each other and not destroy each other?
And how much one's own story with regard to masculinity or something, and what's worked or not worked for us, how that gets in the way, can help how it gets in the way as well.
I don't think, if I may say, the ever-present possibility of destroying one another is where the hope lies. And I think Judith Butler has something to that effect. If rapture is taken out of the picture, if we're trying to build is a sort of sentimental I-thou cocoon, then the possibility for transformation is also goes out the window.
Thank you. Thank you, Mona, Del, and Tony. Sally won't be around for the plenary, I'm sorry. But we're going to go into small groups again, I think, Del, which you're going to organise.
Yes.